The desert has a way of whispering, though most people mistake it for wind. If you listen closely, beneath the hiss of shifting sand and the creak of stone that has stood for thousands of years, you hear something stranger, a warning. Not the kind of warning that shouts in alarm, but the kind that hums quietly, like a lullaby sung by civilizations long gone. The ancients left it everywhere, carved into temple walls, hidden in hieroglyphs, woven into myths that sound like bedtime stories but carry the weight of cosmic law. It is the warning of Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the keeper of wisdom, so vast that even eternity seemed too small to contain it. He measured the heavens, counted the stars, and wrote down truths that could bend reality itself. But here's the catch: he didn't share everything. Some knowledge was too sharp, too heavy, too dazzling for human minds to hold. So instead of handing it over, he tucked it away in symbols, sealed it in rituals, and whispered it only to those who could be trusted not to misuse it. Imagine being told that the universe is not just matter and energy, but a living field of vibration, responsive to thought. Imagine being told that time itself could be bent, that consciousness could shape reality, that civilizations could rise or collapse depending on how they handled these truths. Now imagine hearing all of that while still figuring out how to invent the wheel. The ancients knew humanity wasn't ready, so they left warnings, instead subtle, patient, and wrapped in myth. The pyramids hum with resonance, temples align with stars, and myths echo with phrases like, as above, so below. These are not random curiosities. They are caution signs disguised as art. They say, be careful, knowledge is power, but power without wisdom is ruin. The ancients weren't trying to impress us with their cleverness. They were trying to protect us from ourselves. And so, the first warning remains: tread lightly with the secrets of the cosmos. They are not bedtime stories for amusement, but lullabies meant to keep us calm while the universe waits for us to grow up. If you love mythology and history from all cultures and forbidden ancient stories, subscribe, because this channel reveals the secrets behind every myth. And let me know from where you're watching, hopefully not from under a blanket with one eye open, pretending you're studying cosmic law while actually dozing off like a sleepy pharaoh. The ancients were not naive. They understood that some truths, once released, could not be contained again. Knowledge is like fire. It warms, it illuminates, but it also burns uncontrollably if left untended. Thoth, the divine scribe, carried within him the blueprint of cosmic law, equations of vibration, secrets of time, and the hidden mechanics of consciousness. Yet he also knew that humanity, with its endless appetite for power, would misuse such wisdom if it spread too freely. So he chose silence, not because he wished to hoard knowledge, but because he feared what mortals might do with it. Imagine a farmer suddenly handed the ability to bend time, or a king given the formula to manipulate thought itself. Empires would rise overnight, collapse by morning, and the fragile balance of existence would shatter. The ancients understood this danger, and so they wrapped their most potent insights in myth, ritual, and symbol. The pyramids, temples, and scrolls became vaults of half-truths. What was shared publicly was safe: calendars, medicine, geometry, the kind of knowledge that could build civilizations without destroying them. But beneath the surface lay the forbidden layers, teachings about how vibration shapes matter, how consciousness interacts with energy, how reality itself could be altered. These were never meant to spread, not because they lacked value, but because they carried too much of it. Even today, fragments of this hidden wisdom surface in ways that feel uncanny. A phrase in a hermetic text, a symbol carved into stone, a ritual chant preserved in folklore, all hint at deeper truths. Yet they remain incomplete, like puzzle pieces scattered across centuries. This incompleteness is deliberate. The ancients ensured that no single person could hold the whole picture, because the whole picture was too dangerous. Thus, the story of forbidden knowledge is not about secrecy alone. It is about responsibility. Some truths must remain hidden until humanity learns not only how to use them, but why. Until then, the knowledge that was never meant to spread lingers quietly in myth, waiting for a time when wisdom finally matches curiosity. In the grand theater of Egyptian myth, gods often took on roles that mirrored the deepest human questions. Ra carried the sun, Osiris ruled the underworld, Isis embodied magic and motherhood. But Thoth was different. He was not a warrior, nor a king, nor a god of thunder and spectacle. He was the scribe, the quiet one, the recorder, the keeper of cosmic law. His power lay not in force, but in knowledge, and that made him both indispensable and dangerous. Thoth was said to have measured the heavens, counted the stars, and written down the laws that governed existence. He did not invent these laws. He observed them, catalogued them, and preserved them in a way that mortals could glimpse without fully grasping. To the Egyptians, he was the divine librarian, the custodian of truths too vast for ordinary minds. His wisdom stretched from mathematics to medicine, from astronomy to the mysteries of the soul. Every ritual, every chant, every temple inscription carried his fingerprints. But Thoth was more than a scholar. He was balance itself. In myths, he mediated disputes among gods, restored harmony when chaos threatened, and ensured that the principle of truth and order, remained intact. Without him, the universe would tilt into disorder. With him, it remained steady, like a scale perfectly balanced. This role as cosmic referee made him essential, but it also meant he carried secrets that could not be shared lightly. Imagine a being who knows the equations behind time, the mechanics of consciousness, the vibrations that shape matter. Imagine him watching humanity stumble through wars and empires, knowing that one misplaced truth could unravel everything. Thoth's silence was not neglect. It was protection. He kept the laws safe, sealed in myth and symbol, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready to handle them responsibly. Thus, Thoth stands in history, not as a god of spectacle, but as the quiet guardian of cosmic law. His wisdom was a gift, but his restraint was the greater gift. For sometimes, the most powerful act is not sharing knowledge, but keeping it hidden until the world can bear its weight. The ancients were not careless with their treasures. They built monuments that could withstand millennia, carved symbols into stone that would outlast empires, and whispered truths into rituals designed to echo across generations. Yet, for all their devotion to preservation, they deliberately sealed away certain kinds of wisdom, not because they lacked faith in humanity's curiosity, but because they feared what might happen if curiosity outran responsibility. Thoth, the divine scribe, understood this better than anyone. He carried within him the laws of vibration, the mechanics of time, and the hidden threads that bind consciousness to matter. These were not simple lessons about farming or calendars. They were truths that could alter the very structure of reality. To hand them freely to mortals would be like giving a child a thunderbolt and hoping they wouldn't throw it at the neighbor's hut. So the wisdom was sealed. Some of it was locked in symbols so obscure that only initiates could begin to unravel them. Some was hidden in rituals that looked like theater but carried mathematical precision. Some was buried in myths, disguised as bedtime stories about gods and monsters, so that only those who listened carefully could hear the deeper message. And some was simply withheld, left unspoken, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready. The sealing of wisdom was not an act of cruelty. It was an act of protection. The ancients knew that knowledge without maturity leads to chaos. They had seen kings misuse power, priests twist rituals, and empires collapse under the weight of ambition. Better to keep the most dangerous truths hidden than to watch them ignite civilizations like dry reeds in a fire. Thus, the silence of Thoth was deliberate. It was not ignorance nor neglect, but a safeguard. The wisdom remained, encoded in stone and story, waiting patiently for humanity to grow into it. Until then, the sealed truths served as a reminder. Not all knowledge is meant to be known too soon. The ancients understood something that modern societies often forget. Knowledge and power are not the same thing. Knowledge is the quiet accumulation of truth, the careful observation of how the universe works, the patient recording of laws that govern stars, rivers, and human hearts. Power, on the other hand, is the ability to act upon that knowledge, to bend it, wield it, and impose it on the world. Thoth, the divine scribe, carried immense knowledge, but he was cautious about how it might be transformed into power. Knowledge itself is neutral. It is a collection of facts, insights, and principles. The law of vibration, the cycles of time, the mysteries of consciousness. These are truths that simply are. They do not demand action, they simply exist. Power, however, is what happens when knowledge is placed in human hands. A king who learns the secrets of resonance might use them to build temples that inspire awe, or he might use them to manipulate minds and control his subjects. The same truth can lead to harmony or tyranny depending on how it is applied. This is why Thoth sealed away certain wisdom. He knew that humanity often confuses knowledge with power, believing that to understand something is to control it. But understanding the stars does not mean one can command them. Knowing the laws of consciousness does not mean one should manipulate them. The ancients feared that mortals, driven by ambition, would leap too quickly from knowledge to power, skipping the step of wisdom in between. The difference between knowledge and power is subtle but crucial. Knowledge enlightens, power enforces. Knowledge invites reflection, power demands action. When the two are balanced by wisdom, civilizations flourish. When they are not, chaos follows. Thoth's restraint was a reminder that possessing knowledge is not the same as being ready to wield its power. And so, the ancients left us with a lesson. Seek knowledge for understanding, not for domination. For only when wisdom guides the bridge between knowledge and power can humanity hope to use the secrets of the cosmos without destroying itself. Among the scrolls of wisdom attributed to Thoth, there were teachings so profound that they seemed to blur the line between myth and science. These were not simple lessons about farming cycles or star charts. They were secrets that hinted at the very architecture of reality itself. To reveal them openly would have been like handing humanity the blueprint of existence, a gift too powerful, too volatile, and too easily misused. The ancients believed that vibration was the hidden force behind matter. Every stone, every star, every heartbeat was said to resonate with a frequency that shaped its form. To understand this was to glimpse the possibility of altering reality itself. Imagine knowing that sound could heal or destroy, that thought could ripple outward and change the world around it. Such knowledge, if spread without caution, could collapse civilizations overnight. There were also whispers of time, not as a straight line, but as a field, flexible and responsive. Rituals and symbols hinted at ways to bend perception, to step outside ordinary flow, to glimpse futures or revisit pasts. If humanity had mastered this too soon, history itself might have unraveled. Rewritten by ambition rather than wisdom. Consciousness was another secret. The ancients treated it not as a byproduct of the brain, but as a fundamental force, woven into the fabric of the cosmos. To them, awareness was not confined to humans. It was a universal principle, alive in stars, rivers, and even silence. To know this was to realize that thought and reality were inseparable, a truth that could empower or destroy, depending on who held it. These secrets were not lost. They were deliberately hidden, encoded in myths, disguised in rituals, buried in stone. They were left as fragments, enough to inspire curiosity, but not enough to unleash chaos. Thoth, the keeper of cosmic law, understood that altering reality was not a privilege to be handed freely. It was a responsibility, one humanity had not yet earned. Thus, the greatest secrets remained sealed, waiting for a time when knowledge could be matched by wisdom, and when humanity could hold the power to alter reality without tearing it apart. Ancients knew that the human mind is both a vessel of wonder and a cauldron of chaos. To hand it truths too vast, too sharp, too dazzling, was to risk disaster. Thoth, the divine scribe, carried within him the blueprint of cosmic law, the mechanics of vibration, the secrets of time, the hidden threads of consciousness. But he also understood that not every mind was ready to hold such weight. An unprepared mind treats knowledge like a toy. It plays with truths without understanding their consequences, bends them for ambition, and twists them into tools of control. Imagine a king who learns that thought can shape reality. Would he use it to bring peace to his people, or to bend their wills to his own? Imagine a priest who discovers the laws of vibration. Would he heal the sick, or manipulate crowds with sound? The danger was not in the knowledge itself, but in the immaturity of those who might wield it. History offers endless examples. Civilizations have collapsed not because they lacked wisdom, but because they misused it. The invention of fire brought warmth and light, but also war and destruction. The discovery of metals built tools and temples, but also weapons that toppled empires. Each leap forward carried both promise and peril, and the ancients feared. Thus, Thoth sealed away the most dangerous teachings. He encoded them in symbols, buried them in myths, and whispered them only to initiates who had proven discipline and balance. Even then, the risk remained, for an unprepared mind is like a cracked vessel. Pour too much into it, and it shatters. The danger of unprepared minds is not that they cannot learn, but that they cannot yet bear. Knowledge without wisdom is chaos. Power without maturity is ruin. And so the ancients left us with silence, a reminder that some truths must wait until humanity grows into the responsibility of holding them. The ancients were masters of subtlety. They knew that the most dangerous truths could not be shouted from temple steps or carved plainly into stone. Instead, they wrapped their warnings in symbols, quiet, patient, and enduring. These symbols were not decoration. They were coded messages, reminders that some knowledge was too sharp to be handled carelessly. Hieroglyphs, for example, were more than a writing system. Each image carried layers of meaning, a surface story for the uninitiated and a deeper truth for those who could read between the lines. A feather was not just a feather. It was Mat, the principle of balance and truth. A serpent was not merely a creature. It was the embodiment of cycles, danger, and renewal. To the casual observer, these were pictures. To the trained mind, they were warnings disguised as art. Temples themselves became symbols. Their alignments with stars, their echoing chambers, their carefully measured proportions were not accidents. They whispered of cosmic laws, of vibrations that shape matter, of the delicate balance between knowledge and chaos. To walk through a temple was to walk through a message. Tread carefully, for the universe is precise, and imbalance leads to ruin. Even myths carried warnings. Stories of gods battling chaos, of mortals punished for arrogance, of secrets hidden in the underworld. These were not mere entertainment. They were allegories, teaching humanity that curiosity without wisdom leads to downfall. The myth of Isis and Osiris, the weighing of the heart, the journeys through the duat, all were symbolic reminders that power must be tempered by responsibility. The brilliance of these symbols lies in their endurance. Empires fell, scrolls burned, languages vanished, yet the symbols remained. They survived because they were embedded in culture, disguised as ritual, hidden in plain sight. And so, the warnings of the ancients continue to echo, waiting for minds patient enough to decode them. In the end, the symbols remind us that wisdom is not always spoken directly. Sometimes it is carved into stone, painted on walls, or woven into stories, waiting quietly for those who are ready to see. The ancients trusted symbols more than words, because symbols endure, and their warnings, though hidden, still whisper across the ages. The ancients were not simply dreamers gazing at the stars. They were pragmatists who understood the fragility of human society. They knew that certain truths, if revealed too soon, could act like earthquakes beneath the foundations of civilization. Thoth, the divine scribe, carried within him insights so profound that they could reorder the world. But he also foresaw the chaos that would follow if those insights were handed to minds unprepared for their weight. Consider the idea that thought itself shapes reality. If kings, priests, or generals had fully grasped this, they might have bent entire populations to their will, not through armies, but through manipulation of consciousness. Civilizations would rise overnight, only to collapse under the strain of competing realities. The delicate balance of order would shatter, leaving chaos in its place. Or imagine the knowledge of time as a flexible field rather than a straight line. If mortals had learned to bend perception, to step outside the ordinary flow, history itself could have unraveled. Empires might rewrite their pasts, erase their defeats, or engineer futures that served ambition rather than truth. The continuity of civilization would dissolve, replaced by endless cycles of manipulation. Even the laws of vibration carried danger. To know that sound and frequency could shape matter was to hold a tool of immense power. Used wisely, it could heal, inspire, and build. Used recklessly, it could destabilize structures, minds, and societies. The ancients feared that such knowledge, unleashed without restraint, would collapse the very civilizations it might otherwise strengthen. Thus, the silence of Thoth was not neglect, but foresight. He understood that humanity's hunger for power often outruns its capacity for wisdom. Some truths, if revealed too soon, would not enlighten but destroy. And so, the most dangerous knowledge was hidden, sealed in myth and symbol, waiting for a time when civilizations could bear it without crumbling under its weight. The ancients believed that the universe was not a chaotic swirl of chance, but a carefully ordered system governed by laws as precise as the movements of the stars. Thoth, the divine scribe, was said to have recorded these laws, inscribing them not in plain words, but in symbols, rituals, and myths that carried meaning across centuries. These laws were not simple observations of nature. They were cosmic principles that explained how time flowed, how matter formed, and how consciousness interacted with both. Time, to the ancients, was not a straight line. It was a cycle, a rhythm, a field that could expand and contract. The rising and setting of the sun, the flooding of the Nile, the procession of stars across the sky, all were seen as echoes of deeper laws. To understand time was to realize that it was not fixed, but flexible, responsive to forces beyond ordinary perception. Rituals that aligned with celestial events were not mere ceremonies. They were attempts to harmonize human life with the laws that governed time itself. Matter, too, was seen as more than solid substance. The ancients believed it was shaped by vibration, by patterns of energy that determined form. Stones, temples, even the human body were thought to resonate with frequencies that connected them to the cosmos. To know the laws of matter was to glimpse the possibility of altering it, of healing through sound, of building structures that hummed with harmony, of shaping reality through resonance. These laws were dangerous in their potential. To reveal them openly would have been to hand humanity the keys to creation, long before it was ready to bear such responsibility. Thoth understood that the laws of time and matter were not simply curiosities. They were forces that could collapse civilizations if misused. And so he sealed them away, leaving only fragments in myth and symbol, enough to inspire awe, but not enough to unleash chaos. The laws that govern time and matter remain hidden, whispered in rituals, carved into stone, waiting for a moment when humanity can approach them, not with ambition, but with wisdom. Until then, they linger in silence, reminders that the universe is precise, patient, and far more ordered than we yet understand. The story of Thoth's hidden wisdom is not one of cruelty or secrecy for its own sake. It is a story of timing. The ancients understood that humanity, though curious and ambitious, was not yet prepared to bear the weight of cosmic truths, to hand mortals the laws of vibration, the mechanics of time, or the secrets of consciousness would have been like giving a child the keys to a kingdom. The result would not have been enlightenment, but chaos. Humanity's history is filled with examples of knowledge arriving too soon. Fire brought warmth and progress, but also war and destruction. Metal gave rise to tools and temples, but also weapons that toppled empires. Even simple discoveries like agriculture led to both flourishing societies and endless conflicts over land. Each leap forward carried promise, but also peril. The ancients feared that cosmic knowledge, truths that could bend reality itself, would magnify this pattern beyond repair. Thoth, the keeper of cosmic law, foresaw the dangers. He knew that mortals were driven by ambition, often mistaking power for wisdom. To reveal the deepest truths would have been to invite kings to manipulate minds, priests to twist rituals, and empires to collapse under the weight of arrogance. Humanity was not ready, not because it lacked intelligence, but because it lacked balance. Knowledge without maturity is ruin, and power without responsibility is destruction. Thus, the silence of Thoth was deliberate. He withheld the most dangerous teachings, sealing them in symbols, myths, and rituals that only the disciplined could begin to decode. His restraint was not neglect, but protection, a safeguard against the chaos that would follow if humanity tried to wield truths it could not yet understand. The lesson endures. Readiness is not measured by curiosity, but by wisdom. Humanity's hunger for knowledge is endless, but until it learns to match that hunger with humility, the deepest secrets of the cosmos will remain hidden, waiting for a time when we are truly prepared to hold them. The ancients understood that knowledge was never free. Every truth carried a price, and the greater the truth, the heavier the cost. Thoth, the divine scribe, knew this better than anyone. He had recorded the laws of vibration, the secrets of time, and the mysteries of consciousness, but he also foresaw the burden that such knowledge would place upon humanity. To know too much was not simply to be enlightened, it was to be weighed down by responsibility, temptation, and danger. The cost of knowing too much often revealed itself in history. Civilizations that stumbled upon fragments of forbidden wisdom found themselves transformed, but not always for the better. A king who learned how to manipulate resonance might build temples that inspired awe, but he might also use the same knowledge to control minds. A priest who discovered the mechanics of consciousness might guide souls toward balance, but he might also twist rituals into tools of domination. The line between wisdom and corruption was thin, and the ancients feared humanity would cross it too easily. There was also the psychological burden, to glimpse truths about the nature of reality, that thought shapes matter, that time bends, that consciousness is universal, was to carry a weight that few could bear. Ordinary life seemed trivial in comparison, and those who held such knowledge often found themselves isolated, misunderstood, or consumed by obsession. The cost was not only societal, but personal, a loneliness born of seeing too much. Even today, fragments of these truths surface in science and philosophy. Quantum mechanics hints at realities stranger than myth. Psychology explores the power of thought, and cosmology reveals the vastness of time. Yet with each discovery comes the same dilemma. How much can humanity handle before the cost outweighs the benefit? Thoth's silence was a recognition of this cost. He withheld the most dangerous teachings, not to punish humanity, but to protect it from burdens it could not yet carry. The ancients knew that enlightenment without balance leads to collapse, and that sometimes ignorance is not weakness, but mercy. Thus, the cost of knowing too much remains a warning. Wisdom must grow alongside knowledge, or the weight of truth will crush rather than uplift. The sands of time are not gentle custodians. They bury, they erase, they swallow entire civilizations until only fragments remain. Among those fragments are whispers of teachings attributed to Thoth teachings, so profound that they were not merely forgotten, but deliberately removed from history. The ancients understood that some truths, if left unguarded, could destabilize societies, and so they chose silence, ensuring that the most dangerous wisdom would vanish from the reach of ordinary mortals. Scrolls that once carried cosmic equations were burned or hidden. Temples that encoded resonance in their architecture were dismantled or repurposed. Rituals that hinted at the mechanics of consciousness were simplified into ceremonies that entertained rather than enlightened. What survived was the surface, myths, symbols, and fragments that inspired curiosity but concealed the deeper truths, the core teachings, those that revealed how thought shapes matter, how time bends, how vibration governs existence, were excised, leaving only echoes. This removal was not accidental, it was intentional, a safeguard against misuse. The ancients had seen kings twist wisdom into tyranny, priests wield rituals for control, and empires collapse under the weight of ambition. To preserve balance, they erased the most dangerous knowledge, ensuring that humanity would not stumble upon it prematurely. What remained was enough to inspire awe, but not enough to unleash chaos. Even today, scholars sense the gaps. Hieroglyphs hint at meanings that seem incomplete. Myths carry allegories that feel unfinished, and ruins suggest purposes beyond what history records. These gaps are the fingerprints of lost teachings, reminders that the ancients chose silence over catastrophe. The story of lost teachings is not one of neglect, but of protection. Thoth's wisdom was not destroyed, it was hidden, scattered, and disguised, waiting for a time when humanity might be ready to rediscover it. Until then, history carries only fragments, and the silence of the ancients remains the loudest lesson of all. The ancients did not scatter their most dangerous wisdom like seeds in the wind. They were selective, cautious, and deliberate about who could approach the deeper mysteries. Thoth, the divine scribe, understood that cosmic law was not a gift for everyone. It was a responsibility, and only those who had proven discipline, balance, and humility were permitted to glimpse fragments of it. In Egypt, initiation into sacred knowledge was not a casual affair. Priests and scribes underwent years of training, memorizing rituals, mastering mathematics, and learning the art of silence. They were tested not only in intellect, but in character. Could they resist ambition? Could they hold knowledge without twisting it into power? Only those who passed such trials were allowed to step deeper into the temple's hidden chambers, where symbols whispered truths too dangerous for the unprepared. Even then, the teachings were layered. The outer circle received myths and ceremonies, stories that entertained and inspired but concealed deeper meanings. The inner circle was taught allegories, symbols, and fragments of cosmic law. And the innermost circle, the few who had proven themselves worthy, were entrusted with glimpses of the forbidden truths, the laws of vibration, the mysteries of time, the mechanics of consciousness. These were not handed over lightly. They were guarded as treasures, shared only with those who could bear their weight. The restriction was not cruelty, but protection. The ancients feared that if forbidden knowledge spread too widely, kings would misuse it, priests would corrupt it, and empires would collapse under its burden. By limiting access, they ensured that wisdom remained in the hands of those most likely to preserve balance. Thus, the truth was never lost, only hidden. It was passed from teacher to student, from scribe to initiate, carried quietly through generations. Who was allowed to learn the truth? Only those who had proven that they would not destroy themselves or the world by holding it. The rest were left with myths, symbols, and silence. Reminders that some doors must remain closed until humanity is ready to walk through them. Silence, to the ancients, was not emptiness. It was a tool, a shield, and a language all its own. Thoth, the divine scribe, understood that sometimes the most powerful way to preserve wisdom was not to speak it, but to leave it unspoken. In the temples of Egypt, silence was woven into ritual, carved into stone, and practiced by initiates who knew that words could both reveal and destroy. The role of silence was twofold. First, it protected knowledge. By withholding the most dangerous truths, the ancients ensured that only those prepared to bear them could approach. Silence became a filter, separating the curious from the disciplined, the ambitious from the wise. Those who could endure silence, who could sit patiently with unanswered questions, proved themselves worthy of deeper teachings. Second, silence itself was a lesson. It reminded humanity that not all truths can be grasped through speech or writing. Some must be felt, experienced, or lived. The vibration of a temple chamber, the alignment of stars, the rhythm of ritual, these spoke in silence, carrying meaning beyond words. To listen to silence was to hear the cosmos itself, humming with laws too vast for language. The ancients also knew that silence could prevent misuse. Words, once spoken, could be twisted, corrupted, or weaponized. Silence, however, resisted manipulation. It preserved purity, ensuring that wisdom remained intact until humanity was ready to receive it. In this way, silence was not absence, but presence, a deliberate act of protection. Thus, the role of silence in ancient wisdom was profound. It was the guardian of forbidden truths, the teacher of patience, and the reminder that some knowledge is too sacred to be spoken aloud. Thoth's silence was not neglect, but mercy. It was the quiet assurance that wisdom would endure, waiting in stillness until humanity learned to listen. The ancients feared one scenario above all others, the leaking of truths that were never meant to spread. For centuries, Thoth and the keepers of cosmic law had sealed away the most dangerous teachings, the mechanics of vibration, the bending of time, the power of consciousness, knowing that humanity was not yet ready. But history shows that fragments sometimes escaped, slipping through cracks in silence, carried by rumor, symbol, or accident. When forbidden knowledge leaks, it rarely arrives whole. Instead, it comes as fragments, a ritual misunderstood, a symbol half decoded, a myth taken too literally. Yet even fragments can destabilize. A king who learns a sliver of resonance might use it to manipulate crowds. A priest who grasps a glimpse of consciousness might twist it into control. A society that stumbles upon half-truths may build empires on unstable foundations, only to watch them collapse when the deeper meaning eludes them. The danger lies in imbalance. Knowledge without wisdom becomes weaponized. Power without restraint breeds tyranny. Civilizations that receive forbidden truths too soon often burn brightly for a moment, dazzling the world with sudden leaps in science, architecture, or ritual. But they collapse just as quickly, consumed by ambition and chaos. The leak of forbidden knowledge is not enlightenment. It is acceleration without direction. Yet leaks also serve as warnings. They remind humanity that the cosmos holds truths beyond its grasp, and that curiosity must be tempered by humility. The ancients encoded these lessons in myths of downfall, stories of mortals punished for arrogance, of civilizations swallowed by flood or fire, of gods withdrawing gifts when humans proved unworthy. These were not merely tales, they were allegories of what happens when forbidden knowledge slips into unprepared hands. Thus, the leaking of forbidden wisdom is both peril and prophecy. It destabilizes societies, but it also signals that humanity is inching closer to readiness. Each fragment that escapes is a test. Will we misuse it, or will we grow wiser because of it? The ancients left the answer open, trusting that one day humanity might learn not only to seek knowledge, but to bear it responsibly. Though the ancients sealed away their most dangerous wisdom, fragments of it continue to ripple through our age. The echoes of Thoth's teachings, the laws of vibration, the mysteries of time, the power of consciousness can be felt in modern science, philosophy, and even everyday life. Humanity may not yet hold the full picture, but the shadows of these secrets are unmistakable. Physics now reveals that matter is not solid but composed of energy fields and vibrations. Quantum mechanics suggests that particles behave more like waves, resonating in ways the ancients hinted at through ritual and sound. Modern medicine experiments with sound therapy and frequency healing, echoing the ancient belief that vibration shapes both body and spirit. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the notion of time as fixed, showing it to be elastic, influenced by speed and gravity. This mirrors the ancient idea that time is not a straight line, but a field that bends. Practices like meditation and altered states of consciousness give glimpses of time experienced differently, echoing rituals that sought to step outside ordinary flow. Neuroscience and philosophy increasingly explore consciousness as more than a byproduct of biology. Theories of panpsychism, that awareness permeates all matter, resonate with the ancient view that consciousness is woven into the cosmos itself. Experiments in psychology and physics hint that observation itself alters reality, a modern echo of the ancient teaching that thought and matter are inseparable. Myths once dismissed as superstition are now studied as encoded wisdom. The weighing of the heart, the cycles of gods, the alignment of temples, all are re-examined as metaphors for truths science is only beginning to articulate. Even popular culture reflects these echoes, with films, books, and art exploring themes of hidden knowledge, alternate realities, and the power of thought. The ancients may have sealed their wisdom, but the universe itself continues to whisper it back to us. Each scientific breakthrough, each philosophical insight, each cultural fascination with mystery is an echo of those forbidden truths. Humanity is still piecing together the fragments, still learning to balance curiosity with responsibility. The echoes remind us that the secrets of Thoth were never destroyed, only hidden, waiting for us to grow wise enough to hear them clearly. The silence of the ancients was not broken by time. Even now, in an age of satellites, quantum theories, and digital archives, the deepest teachings of Thoth remain hidden. The question is not whether humanity has the tools to uncover them. It does. The question is whether humanity has the wisdom to bear them. Knowledge of vibration, time, and consciousness could be weaponized. Just as fire became both warmth and war, these truths could be twisted into tools of control, manipulation, or destruction. The ancients foresaw this danger and deliberately encoded their wisdom in symbols and myths, ensuring that fragments might inspire but never unleash chaos. Humanity's progress has been dazzling, but ambition often outruns responsibility. Technology advances faster than ethics, and power is sought more eagerly than balance. The ancients withheld their most dangerous teachings because they knew that curiosity without humility leads to collapse. That truth remains unchanged today. Much of the forbidden wisdom survives, but in forms that appear harmless. Stories of gods, rituals of balance, symbols carved into stone. These disguises protect the teachings, ensuring they remain hidden until humanity learns to decode them responsibly. The continued silence is itself a test. Each generation receives fragments, scientific breakthroughs, philosophical insights, spiritual awakenings, and must decide how to use them. If humanity proves capable of wielding these fragments wisely, perhaps the deeper truths will reveal themselves. If not, they will remain sealed. The reason these teachings remain hidden today is not that they are lost, but that they are guarded. The ancients trusted silence more than speech, patience more than haste. They believed that wisdom must grow alongside knowledge, or else knowledge becomes ruin. Thus, the hidden truths of Thoth endure, waiting in myth, symbol, and silence. They are not gone, they are watching, waiting for the moment when humanity finally learns not only to seek knowledge, but to honor it. The wisdom of Thoth was never meant to vanish. It was meant to endure in silence, waiting for humanity to grow into it. Yet before withdrawing the most dangerous truths, the divine scribe left a final warning, a message woven into myth, symbol, and ritual, echoing across centuries. It was not a threat, but a caution. Knowledge without wisdom is ruin, and power without balance is destruction. Thoth's last counsel was clear. Do not mistake curiosity for readiness. Humanity's hunger for knowledge is endless, but without humility, it becomes arrogance. The ancients encoded this warning in myths of downfall. Kings punished for pride, mortals undone by ambition, civilizations swallowed by chaos when they reached too far, too fast. Knowledge itself is neutral, but power is not. To wield cosmic truths without discipline is to invite collapse. Thoth warned that the laws of vibration, time, and consciousness could heal or destroy, depending on the heart of the one who holds them. The danger was never in the truths themselves, but in the hands that would misuse them. Perhaps the greatest warning was silence itself. By withholding the deepest teachings, Thoth reminded humanity that some doors must remain closed until wisdom matches curiosity. Silence was not neglect, but mercy, a safeguard against chaos, a reminder that patience is part of enlightenment. Thoth's final message was timeless. If humanity seeks forbidden knowledge without balance, it will collapse under its own ambition. But if it learns humility, discipline, and responsibility, the sealed truths will one day reveal themselves. The choice lies not in the cosmos, but in humanity's hands. Thus, the final warning left by Thoth endures. Seek knowledge, but do not rush to wield it. Grow wise before you grow powerful. For only then will the secrets of the universe unfold without destroying the world that longs to know them. The ancients believed that silence was more than the absence of sound. It was a sanctuary. In silence, the mind could rest, the spirit could heal, and the soul could align with the rhythms of the cosmos. Thoth, the divine scribe, taught that silence was the final guardian of wisdom, the shield that protected humanity from truths too heavy to bear. To sleep under the protection of silence was to surrender to this sanctuary. The temples of Egypt were designed with chambers that echoed softly, where initiates would lie in stillness, listening not to words, but to the hum of the universe. In that silence, they found peace, balance, and renewal. It was said that silence itself carried the vibration of truth, wrapping the sleeper in harmony and shielding them from chaos. Even today, silence remains a refuge. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and ambition, silence offers a rare gift, the chance to rest without burden, to dream without fear, to let the mind drift into the vastness of the cosmos. To sleep under silence is to remember that wisdom is patient, that truth waits, and that the universe hums quietly even when we do not listen. And so, as the ancients whispered, let silence be your guardian tonight. Close your eyes, let the noise fade, and rest in the stillness that has protected seekers for centuries. Sleep under the protection of silence, where dreams are gentle and the cosmos watches over you. Good night.